I never feared quiet until it began to move through my home like a stranger. For most of my life, silence had been my companion. In the classroom it meant respect. At home, after long days of teaching, it meant peace. I used to wake early just to enjoy the morning hush, tea steaming, garden still, the rustle of newspapers on the porch. But now the silence is colder. It settles between conversations, in glances not exchanged, in footsteps that avoid my end of the hall. It is not peaceful anymore. It is political. 3 years ago, when Michael came home after the divorce, the house came alive again. He brought noise, movement, even laughter back into these rooms. We'd cook together, watch the evening news, argue over crossword puzzles. He never said much about what had gone wrong in his marriage, and I didn't push. When he told me about Clara, he sounded lighter. I liked that. I wanted to like her too. First I did. She was polished, soft-spoken, always with a candle in her purse or a new tea to try. She brought order to Michael's mess, suggested new recipes, helped organize the pantry. Then, slowly, her hands moved over more of the house. She rearranged my spice rack, moved the good china, boxed up old linens without asking. "It's just a little refresh," she said once, as if my home were a hotel lobby. Michael watched it happen. Sometimes he gave me a sheepish smile, like he didn't agree, but couldn't be bothered to stop her. He stopped eating breakfast with me. Then he stopped asking about my day. Then they started locking the door between our sections of the house. They said it was for privacy. For a while, I told myself not to mind. I reminded myself I'd invited them in. That I'd always said Michael would have a home here. That Clara was trying in her own way. But it's hard not to mind when you find your teaching awards packed into a cardboard box in the garage. When I asked Clara about it, she smiled. "We're just trying to declutter a little. Create more space." More space for whom? I didn't ask. I just took the box upstairs to my room and closed the door. Some erasures are done quietly. Not with a scream but with a shrug. Started with the curtains. One afternoon I came home from the co-op to find the lace panels from the sitting room gone. In their place were stiff, beige blinds, silent and characterless. The light felt different after that. Harder. Like it had passed through something suspicious. When I asked Clara, she said, "They just looked a bit dated, Margaret. We thought a cleaner look would modernize the space." Not Michael. Not Clara. We, the unit I no longer belonged to. Then came the photograph. It had lived on the mantel for over 30 years. Michael at age 7, covered in flour, sitting beside a peach pie we baked together for the school picnic. I noticed it missing one morning while dusting. When I found it later, tucked into a side drawer behind some spare batteries, the glass was cracked. I didn't ask about it. I didn't put it back. Instead, I started waking up earlier than usual. 5 a.m. tea in the dark. Just me and the kitchen shadows. My house felt safest before anyone else stirred. They began eating separately. Ordering in. Clara developed a distaste for my cooking. Too salty, too rich, too much oil. "We're trying to eat clean," Michael explained, not quite meeting my eyes. Clara stopped including me in dinner plans altogether. I began making soup for one. At first, I told myself it was generational. I was just a reminder of an older way. Old furniture, old habits, old loyalties. I told myself I was being sensitive. Then, one Saturday, I overheard them talking in the laundry room. They didn't know I was home. "She just lingers," Clara said. "It's like she's always watching." "She's not trying to interfere," Michael replied, his voice thin. "She doesn't have to try. She's everywhere. Her things, her routines, her energy. I can't breathe." I stood in the hallway, unseen, still holding the mail. My fingers clenched around a catalog until the pages tore slightly. I didn't make a sound. Later that night, I emptied a drawer in the hallway chest. Old stamps, mismatched pens, takeout menus from years gone by. I made it neat. I told myself I was making room. But I knew what I was doing. I was rehearsing how to disappear. There are days that pass like water. And then there are the ones that carve valleys. It was a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic. No storm, no slammed doors. Just the sharp click of a drawer locking. I had gone to retrieve my checkbook from the kitchen desk, an old wooden thing tucked beneath the stairs, where I kept household ledgers, grocery lists, envelopes. The drawer, once loose from years of wear, wouldn't budge. Checked the key slot. I stood there for a moment, then called up the stairs. Michael answered, distracted. "Oh, yeah, we locked that," he said. "Some of Clara's documents are in there now. She's worried about security. My checkbook is in that drawer." "I'll get you some checks from the joint account," he said. "Just leave it to me, okay?" The joint account. The one I'd added his name to after the divorce. Temporary, I told myself. Just until he got back on his feet. Now I was asking permission to access my own life. Later that week, a man came to the house to measure the front room. I assumed it was for curtains again or perhaps paint samples. But when I asked, Clara smiled with her teeth. "We're just getting quotes," she said. Michael mentioned the space might be better used. Better used for what? She didn't answer. That evening I heard them whispering again, this time in the kitchen. "I'm just saying," Clara was saying. "If we turn that room into an office, she won't feel so territorial." "She's not territorial. She is, Michael. You're just used to it. She guards everything. It's not healthy." "Don't say that." "Why not? It's true." That night, I stood in my room for nearly 10 minutes without turning on the light. The shape of my life had begun shifting. The house, my house, no longer answered to me. And Michael? He had started speaking of me like I was a problem to be managed. Later that week, I received a call from my pension provider. A routine check, they said. Just a few updates to the listed beneficiaries. I hadn't changed anything. When I asked for clarification, they said, "Your son Michael submitted the new form. We assumed it was with your approval." I didn't answer. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. Thank them. Then I hung up. I sat very still for a long time. The house was quiet again, too quiet. Even the fridge hum felt like it was holding its breath. That evening I made a decision. Not a dramatic one. No ultimatums. No confrontation. I simply began to write everything down. Conversations. Locked drawers. Missing files. Notes on pension paperwork. Every change in the house. Every comment, every glance, every silence. Because when the people you love begin to edit your story, you need to hold on to the original manuscript. Some awakenings don't arrive with noise. They arrive in the space where loyalty used to live. I started sleeping with my bedroom door locked. Not out of fear exactly. Just clarity. A quiet instinct that the space I occupied was no longer mine in the way it used to be. Clara began calling the guest room the office. I never heard her ask. One day I simply noticed my mother's quilt folded into a plastic bin in the garage. The lamp was gone. My books, stacked neatly in a box labeled miscellaneous. They didn't mean it cruelly, I told myself. They just wanted to make use of space. But the cruelty wasn't in the action. It was in the assumption. One morning I overheard Clara on a video call, speaking with someone from a design firm. "Yes, it's technically still her house," she was saying. "But once we settle the power of attorney paperwork, we'll have more flexibility." Power of attorney. The words rang like a dropped plate. That evening I brought it up to Michael, gently. I heard Clara mention something about paperwork. About the house. He looked tired. Or maybe bored. "She's just trying to help organize things, Mom. You've said yourself that keeping track of all your documents is stressful." "I never said that." "Well, you've been forgetting things." I stared at him. "Such as?" He fidgeted. "Just little things. The lawn guy. The name of Clara's mother." "I don't know Clara's mother." "That's not the point." I let the silence hang. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he added. "Clara's just trying to help." Help. That word again. Like a lid closing on a box. The next morning I canceled the automatic transfers from my savings account to the joint one. I contacted my lawyer quietly. No announcements, just the beginning of a paper trail. Elaine, a former student of mine and now a financial assistant at a local firm, offered to review some of my documents. She didn't say much when she saw the recent changes, just underlined a few things and looked at me with that quiet steadiness I had once admired in her essays. "I'd recommend requesting full access logs," she said, pointing to one form. "For what?" "For everything," she said gently. "Phone records, email forwarding, any permissions tied to your estate. Better to know than to wonder." She never said, "I think they're planning something." She didn't have to. That afternoon, I opened the bottom drawer of my wardrobe and took out the tin box where I kept my husband's letters. He's been gone 13 years now, but I still remember the way he looked at me when things were uncertain, like I was a compass. "You'd hate this," I said aloud to no one. "You'd want to shake him." Inside one of the envelopes, I found an old list in his handwriting. Emergency numbers, account passwords, the name of a lawyer we hadn't used in years. He had written it after his diagnosis, just in case. Added to it now, my own handwriting beside his. A new list for a new kind of storm. Some truths don't shout. They stand quietly in the hallway, waiting to be noticed. It was a Sunday afternoon. I had returned home early from the flower market. The scent of freesia still clung to my sleeves. I remember the soft weight of the paper bundle in my arms, the way the sky looked, gray but not yet threatening. The front door was unlocked. Michael and Clara were out for brunch, or so I thought. I moved quietly, not wanting to interrupt in case they had returned early. The house was still. I set the flowers down in the kitchen sink and walked toward the staircase, then stopped at the sound of laughter. Low, unfamiliar. A man's voice. Not Michael's. It came from the guest room. The one that was once my mother's, then mine, then the office. The door was half closed. I didn't mean to look. I only meant to pass. But I saw, through the narrow gap, a man sitting on the edge of the bed, shirt unbuttoned. Clara was beside him, barefoot, hair damp, legs folded underneath her like she belonged to no one. They didn't see me. I moved back slowly, retraced my steps to the kitchen, picked up the flowers. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. There was no sound in the house now but the slow drip of the faucet and the soft settling of footsteps overhead. I didn't go back upstairs. Instead, I took the flowers out to the garden, cut the stems, arranged them in the old ceramic vase. The one my husband had given me after my first year teaching. Had a chip on the base. I'd always kept it anyway. By the time Michael returned that evening, alone, I had already made dinner, set the table for 3. Asked nothing, said nothing. But I watched him carefully. The way he looked at her. The way she avoided his gaze. And I thought, this is how it begins. Not with the act itself, but with the silence that follows. You don't shout the truth into someone's face when they've been trained to ignore your voice. You plant it where they'll trip over it. For the next 3 days I watched them. Michael and Clara moved through the house like performers slightly out of sync. She avoided his touch. He looked at her the way a child looks at a broken toy. Confused, ashamed, and vaguely responsible. She didn't know I'd seen. He didn't know he should be looking. I didn't tell Elaine right away. I needed time to sit with the knowing. Let it settle into the marrow. It's one thing to be removed from your own life quietly. It's another to be asked to bless the lie that pushed you out. On the 4th day I sent Michael an email. Just one line. "Let's have coffee in the garden. Just you and me. Tomorrow at 10. No subject line. No punctuation." He replied within the hour. Of course. Clara didn't ask where he was going the next morning. She was on her phone, walking circles in the living room. I watched her through the kitchen window as I brewed the coffee. Black for him, weak with milk for me. The garden was quiet. Sunlight filtered through the lattice. The air smelled of mint and damp soil. He arrived on time, hair still damp from the shower, shirt wrinkled. He smiled the way he used to when he brought home bad grades. Hopeful and pre-defensive. "I've missed this," he said, sitting down. Just us. I let him talk. About work, about deadlines, about a show Clara had started watching. He was trying to build a normal bridge across a ruined field. When his voice slowed, I placed an envelope on the table between us. He looked down. "What's this?" "It's not legal," I said softly. "Not a letter from a lawyer. Just something I thought you should see." Inside was a photograph. Not one I'd taken. One that Elaine's niece, who did part-time catering for private homes, had sent me after I asked if anyone else had seen visitors at my house while I was out. It was Clara, laughing, head tilted toward the same man I'd seen through the cracked door. They were leaving a restaurant downtown. Hands not quite touching, faces too close. Michael stared at it. For a long time he didn't speak. Then finally, "When?" "I don't know when it started. But I know where I saw it." He looked up. His eyes were wet. "I didn't want this," he said. "I believe you. She said you were making things up. That you wanted her gone." I nodded once. "I know." Silence again. But not the old kind, the heavy, accusing silence. This one felt like standing at the edge of something. "I feel like a fool." "You're not a fool," I said. "You're a man who wanted to believe the person he loved." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "What do I do?" I didn't answer. That wasn't my question to answer anymore. Sometimes you don't leave a place. You leave a role. Michael didn't speak much after that morning in the garden. He moved through the house differently. Quiet, slow, like someone stepping through a room he hadn't realized was full of glass. Clara avoided me entirely. She must have known. Or maybe he hadn't told her yet. It didn't matter. By the end of the week, he left to stay with a friend. He didn't ask me to explain anything. Didn't ask for forgiveness. Just left a small note on the kitchen counter. "I need time. Sorry." I read it once, folded it in half, and placed it in the drawer where I kept receipts. Not because I planned to keep it. Just because that was the drawer where forgotten things went. Clara left 2 days later. A short text message. No forwarding address. She took the gray suitcase and the pearl earrings she thought I didn't know were mine. The house was quiet after they left. But it was a different quiet. Not empty. Not heavy. Just mine. I walked through every room. Touched each surface. The countertop she had criticized. The curtain rod she replaced. The drawer she once locked. Anne locked it slowly. My checkbook was gone. That was fine. In the back corner of the drawer was a recipe card. Michael's handwriting. Age 11. Misspelled cinnamon. Cinnamon apple bread. For Mom. I closed the drawer softly. That afternoon I called the lawyer. "The documents are ready," he said. "The reversal is complete. Title has been returned. All financial powers revoked." "Good," I said. "Please send everything in hard copy. I'd like to file it myself." He paused. "And your son? That's not part of this." I spent the next day boxing things I no longer needed. Tableware Clara had chosen. Guest towels no one used. Framed photos I didn't remember taking. I made piles: keep, donate, discard. Not for the house. For my own clarity. In the evening I sat on the back porch. The sky was thick with late summer heat. A few birds still passed low across the garden. I held the locket my husband had given me after our third miscarriage. His initials, worn smooth by years of grief and fingers. I pressed it gently between my palms. "You would have seen it all," I whispered. "But you'd be proud of me for seeing it now." The next morning I walked to the small post office on Main Street. In my bag was a single envelope addressed to Michael. Inside, a photograph of the house. Taken from the sidewalk with the porch lights off. No note. No signature. Just the image of a place that no longer belonged to him. Or to Clara. Or even to me in the way it once had. I stepped out of the post office and into the bright, hot morning. And I didn't look back. 5 years later. Some doors stay closed. Others open quietly, but only from the inside. It was early September. The kind of day that slips between seasons. Sunlight warm, but the wind already whispering of cold. I was deadheading the roses near the gate when I heard the engine. Quiet car. Not flashy, but expensive in its stillness. I didn't turn. Not immediately. Only when the door opened and I heard his voice. Lower than I remembered. Tired in a different way. "Mom!" I straightened up slowly. My knees weren't what they used to be. I wiped my hands on my apron. There he was. Michael. A little grayer at the temples. Thinner. But not diminished. If anything. He carried himself like someone used to rooms falling silent when he entered. "I was nearby," he said. "I thought I'd stop by." I looked at him for a long time. Then nodded toward the porch. "You can sit. I'll put on tea." We didn't hug. Inside, everything was as it had been by design. I had made no dramatic changes, but the house no longer belonged to ghosts. On the table I placed 2 cups. He noticed the floral china. It used to be his grandmother's. I watched his fingers trace the rim, as if trying to locate a version of the past he could still claim. "I didn't know if you'd still be here," he said. "I am." He nodded. "You look well. You too." We sat in the soft clink of teaspoons and porcelain. He took a breath. "I've built something," he said finally. "A company. Real estate. Legal services. We help seniors protect their assets. It started after." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I stirred my tea once, then set the spoon down. "You turned what you learned into something useful." He smiled. "I guess so." Silence. Not heavy. Not cold. Just still. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. Placed it on the table between us. "I know you don't need anything. This isn't about that. It's just, for the garden. Or whatever you want." I didn't touch it. "I came," he said softly, "because I wanted to say I'm sorry." I looked at him then. Not the boy I raised. Not the man who once let me vanish into my own walls. But someone in between. Someone still figuring out what apology really means. "Thank you," I said. And meant it. But I didn't say more. He stayed another hour. We walked once through the garden. He asked about the irises. I told him they didn't bloom as long as they used to, but they were faithful. When he left, I watched the car disappear down the road. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I simply went back to my pruning. The roses still needed me. Closure isn't a conversation. It's what you do when the words are done. The envelope sat untouched for a week. I moved it once, from the kitchen table to the drawer by the window, then back again. Not because I didn't know what to do with it, but because I wasn't sure it deserved to be anywhere. On the 8th day I opened it. Inside, check. Large one. Larger than he probably expected me to need. More than enough to cover repairs, renovations, or a new greenhouse if I ever wanted one. But I didn't. I folded it in half and wrote, in my own neat script across the back, "This house is not for sale." Then I walked to the small post office and mailed it to his office, the one printed on the return envelope. I didn't include a note. He would understand. Later that evening, I sat at my desk and opened a fresh envelope of stationery. Thick paper. Ivory colored. The kind I used when something needed weight. I wrote to my lawyer. Not much, just a few clear sentences. I would like to update my will. Michael Bennett is to be removed as beneficiary. Instead, the estate should be transferred to a community trust, dedicated to single women over 65 who are displaced or at risk of losing housing. Call it the Rose Fund. That seems right. I signed it, dated it, folded it slowly. There was no anger in it. No judgment. Just the understanding that some legacies are better grown from new soil. In the weeks that followed, I felt something lift. Not dramatically. Just a lightness in the way the air moved through the hall. A new stillness. One I had earned. Sometimes I still hear from Michael. Postcard. A voice message around holidays. He never asks to come again, and I don't invite him. We've each built something from the wreckage. His offices, deals, apologies. Mine. Quiet mornings, lilies in bloom, and a chair by the window where no one ever tells me to move. It was early spring the year I turned 72. The roses were slow to wake that year, but the daffodils came early, stubborn and bright as coins. The garden was quieter now. No more big ambitions. Just things that returned without being asked. I liked that. I had moved my bedroom to the front of the house, where the light came in sooner, and the street noise reminded me there was still a world out there, even if I no longer rushed to meet it. Kept fewer things. Gave away the china. Donated the books I didn't love. The fewer objects I owned, the more clearly I heard myself. I didn't see Michael again. Not in person. He sent a holiday card every December. Thick cardstock, gold letters, the faces of his wife and 2 children printed across the front like a magazine. He never wrote much inside. Just, "Thinking of you," followed by his signature. I didn't reply. I didn't throw them away either. I kept them in a drawer near the stove. Not because I needed them, but because grief is not always about letting go. Sometimes it's about letting things live in a drawer and not touch anything else. The fund I'd created, the Rose Fund, grew quietly. Elaine handled it with care. Every year, 2 or 3 women found shelter, time, and breath again through it. No ceremonies. No photos. Just a room of their own and the right to say no. Sometimes they wrote me letters. Not of thanks exactly. More like recognition. "See you. I know what this is. Thank you for not asking us to explain." I kept those letters on my writing desk. One morning I walked to the mailbox and found a slim package from a return address I didn't recognize. Inside was a book. Collected letters of forgotten women. On the inside flap, a note in Michael's handwriting. "You said once that stories are how people survive. I'm starting to understand what you meant. You don't have to read this. I just wanted you to have it. Love." I read the first few pages. Not because he sent it, but because it was good. Later that day I made soup. Leek and potato, simple, no salt. I sat by the kitchen window, listening to the wind move through the lattice. The chair across from me stayed empty, as it should. Outside, the daffodils bowed slightly in the breeze. The house creaked once in the old way it did when settling after sun. Thought, this is enough. Not because I had won. Not because they had lost. But because I was here, whole, unclaimed and unbothered. And I never once asked the silence to leave.